All right, we got the dreaded X and Y intercepts. Now, these are fairly easy if you can remember how to do them. If you don't remember how to do them, it's a sad day. That's a sad day, not remembering how to do the X and Y intercepts. So we're going to show you how to do those today. So these are X and Y intercepts. I'm going to get my example graph here. So here's my example graph. Now, I've got my lines for my grid. So there's my grid. And here's a line. I'm going to switch to green so I can get another line. There's another line. And we'll get one more line up here. We'll get a red line, because I like red. It's fancy. Oh, so there's my red line. Now, I'm going to show you the X and Y intercepts. You'll notice X intercepts where the line crosses the X-axis. Here's an X-intercept. Here's the X-intercept of the red line. Here's the X-intercept of the green line. This is where the line crosses the X-axis. What is so important for you to remember is that all of these points, y is equal to 0, and that's going to help us solve for the X-intercept as we go on in this problem. Y is equal to 0 at all these points, all the points where it crosses the X-axis. Same thing is true in an opposite fashion when you cross the Y-axis. X is 0. You haven't gone left or right at all. X is 0. So that's true about all of your Y-intercepts. And again, this is going to help us immensely when we go and solve for the intercepts. So when we look at these problems, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to take and get an equation. So I'm going to grab an equation. We're going to say 8x plus 4y is equal to 12. All right. Now, many of you, I've got this equation. You're going to want to take and solve it for y. But look at what the question on the test and or quiz is asking you to do. If it's asking you for the x and y intercepts, you can solve for y. It's possible to take it from there, but you don't really want to, because it's very easy to solve it just like this. In fact, this is the preferable way to solve for x and y intercepts. You don't actually have to change the equation at all. It's very easy to do different kinds of equations and still solve for x and y intercepts. So anytime I ask you for x and y intercepts, you know you've got 2 points. So I would write those down. As soon as you see x and y intercepts, you know you're finding 2 points. 1 point where it crosses the x-intercept, or the x-axis. 1 point where it crosses the y-axis. So you know you've got 2 points. We're going to write those 2 points down. Then you know another thing about them. For the x-intercept, you know y is 0. So you've already got that value that you know you're going to have. Write it down. Same thing for the y-intercept. You know x is going to be 0. Write it down. There's no sense to leave that blank if you already know what's going to happen. The next thing, we have 2 things that we need to find. We need to find this x value and this y value. So the first thing we're going to find is our x value, because I wrote it first, and that makes me happy to do things that I write first. So we've got 8x plus 4y equals 12. What we know about this y is that it's 0. We don't know anything about the x right now, so I've still got 8x. I've got 8x plus 4 times 0, because this y value is 0. We know it's going to be 0 at that x-intercept. So 4 times 0 is 0. I now have 8x equal 12. I now have x equal 12 over 8. And that will reduce down to x equal 3 over 2. And some of you don't like fractions. I love to answer in fractions. You will see a lot of them. We look at the y-intercept, and it's the same process. It's a separate equation. All right, x equal 3 over 2 when y is equal to 0. That's how we get that point. Y was 0, and then we found x. Same thing is going to be true here. For the y-intercept, x is 0. And you'll notice in our point, x is 0. We take it, put it into the equation. 8 times 0 is, of course, 0. I now have 4y is equal to 12. Y is now equal to 3 once I divide everything by 4. And that's the y-intercept. And it is that easy. You do have to remember what you wrote down here and put it up there. But it's that easy to solve for the y-intercept. All you have to do is put 0 for x, solve for the y, put 0 for y, solve for the x. And it doesn't matter how the equation is set up, it's always conducive to solve for the x and the y-intercept, because 0 is such an easy number to substitute in for a variable. Let's look at a different setup. Let's say you've already solved it for y. Now this is a common problem for many students. I've got y equals 4x plus, y equals 4x plus 3. Right? And it says solve for the x and y intercepts. Two things are true. First thing, many students will identify this as the x-intercept as 4. But remember, from slope-intercept form, this 4 is not the x-intercept. It is, in fact, the slope. So we want to back off of that and make sure that we approach all x and y intercept problems the same way. As soon as you see x and y intercept problems, you know you've got 2 points. One is the x-intercept. Y is 0 at the x-intercept, so I'm going to write that down. The other is the y-intercept. Y is 0 for the x-intercept. X is 0 for the y-intercept. So you want to make sure you write that down. All right. Once we've got everything written down, we can then approach the problem. Many of you will tell me, well, I know the y-intercept is 3 because of slope-intercept form. I'm going to say, well, that's great. Write it down. You can always write it down as soon as you know for sure, then that's fine. You don't have to solve for it. I will solve for it later just to be extra safe. But if you know for sure that's what's going on, write it down. So now we want to solve for the x-intercept. I put a 0 for y. And now all I have to do is solve for x. Don't divide by 4 here. You want to move that 3 to the other side. I've got negative 3 equals 4x. You're going to see another fractional answer here. X is now equal to negative 3 over 4. We'll leave it just like that. That's it. That's all you have to do. Very conducive to solving for x and y intercepts pretty much at all times. We look at the y-intercept. Again, many of you will say, well, I already know that, and that's fantastic. So I've got y is equal to 4 times 0 plus 3. X goes away because it's 0, and that's in fact why we know the b value is a secondary, because x will always go away with your slope. Y is equal to 3. We got that same answer. It's a great way to check your work. Anyway, this is the x and the y-intercept. This is the best way to approach it. Make sure you write those 2 points down. A lot of the times students will miss it. Example, this same one, they say x is 3/4, y is 3. I'm going to answer just like this, 3/4, comma 3. This is a sad day. You will get this wrong. All right, sad day. Do not answer like this. The point negative 3, 4, negative 3 over 4, and 3 is not even on this graph. All right, so do not list it as a point like this. You need 2 separate points. 2 separate points. Don't even want to see that anymore. 2 separate points when you answer x and y intercept. All right, so that's how to do x and y intercept the best way. Make sure you write down both of those points before you start your work.